Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is receiving. Many of us who identify as givers have a challenge in receiving, and today we're going to take a look at how true receiving requires an opening of the heart and is in actuality an act of generosity to truly receive. So should be an interesting conversation, maybe a different take on things. And before we begin, hi, Rosalind, welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started today, let's just take a couple minutes to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub those hands together to feel all the sensations, the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, and the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so good to be back with you. So we're talking about receiving. Good morning, Robin. Welcome. Good to have you with us this morning. So receiving, many of us are very generous in giving. And it's interesting. I find that people who are very generous in giving often have a very difficult time receiving. And there's an awkwardness, maybe a fear of, tit for tat, owing someone, being a burden to someone, not deserving. There are a whole lot of different dynamics behind the difficulty in receiving. And what I've become aware of is that in order to truly receive, it requires an open-heartedness. Oftentimes people are afraid to receive because they think that they will then be obligated to the person that was giving to them. And in some situations, people do give in order to get. And we get to pay attention to our awareness, our inner awareness around that, because sometimes people will give to create an obligation, but in many cases that's not true. And so in order to truly receive, it requires an open-heartedness. It requires a level of presence. And that in itself, that level of presence, that open-heartedness, is in and of itself an act of generosity, right? To have the willingness to open one's heart to receive. And when we think about receiving, I'm not just talking about gifts of, that might be positive type gifts, but also feedback that people might be giving us, or when people are sharing of themselves, to be able to receive that also requires a level of presence and a willingness to open oneself to connecting with that other person. So I'm wondering, in as you look in your life, what is it that occurs for you when someone extends themselves, when someone gives you something, when someone gives you a compliment? Do you repel that compliment? Do you say, oh, no, 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 that's not, do you mitigate that, or do you receive it? Do you allow that to sort of sink in and have an impact? And there's maybe even a courage in receiving, to allow yourself to be impacted by someone, to be opening into receiving rather than closing it off. I notice that also there are times when someone is offering generosity and the response is closing down, is actually separating rather than a movement toward. And it's such a very interesting dance to notice. I'm not saying that we should always be receiving, because there are people that use gifting or giving or feedback or whatever as a means of asserting power and domination. That happens too. So we get to be discerning in this arena, just like we get to be discerning everywhere. And that discernment isn't defensiveness, it's attunement. It's being able to be present to what our knowing is, and then acting out of that knowing, rather than acting reflexively, unconsciously. Seems like the theme for this week is consciousness, is being aware, being aware and tuned in to the knowing that we have innately, like the deeper gut kind of knowing. It's so interesting how much trouble we get ourselves into when we ignore what we know, the gut feeling. Over and over and over, I've seen this phenomena happen where people will get into a world of hurt, and due to interactions with another person. And when it comes down to it, they can recognize that they knew ahead of time that this was going to be trouble, but they overrode their own knowing and moved forward anyway. So Robin says, I'm learning to receive. Generally, let's see, general, I expressed it was supposed to be. It comes natural to give. Okay. So what I'm understanding is that giving comes naturally, receiving not so much. That being able to receive has been more of a challenge. And I invite you to look at that. In receiving, we're giving a gift also. I don't know about you, but if you're a giver, my guess is that there is a pleasure in giving, that there is um, a reward in giving and generosity and sharing with someone, that seeing someone else delight in something that you've been able to give them, or something that you've said to them, that it makes you feel good to give. And why would we deny that to others? Right? Why would we deny that satisfaction and joy to others? I think that when a gift is given freely without expectation of return, then there's a joy that that person experiences in the delight experienced by the recipient, right? So so Robin says, what goes around comes around. Yeah, I mean, like, giving is receiving, because the giver gets to receive some joy in that, if especially if the receiver is expressing gratitude. If a gift is received isn't really received, if the person doesn't appreciate it, I guess, if there's no appreciation of the gift, then maybe you don't keep giving. There was a family member that I gave gifts to who never really even acknowledged those gifts. So I finally stopped giving them, because if it wasn't appreciated, there I, I didn't experience the joy of giving it, um, without that. I guess that is the thing that in giving I wanted to be able to receive. And there are people, and I have given donations anonymously, so that there's a satisfaction in knowing that you're making a contribution to something, and maybe you don't need to have the gratitude from it or for it. And that's a nice thing. It's a nice thing when giving something to someone, to know that it's made a difference. And that's how we get to feel good about it too, right? So Robin says, if you give with a grateful heart, then a blessing will be received in return. Well, I think you're absolutely right, Robin. And the grateful heart maybe is the gift, right? I just, I think that in giving, there needs to be some level of reciprocity. And it doesn't mean that I give something to you and you give me something, that equals in measure, but the delight that I see that you have in receiving, that in itself is a gift. Rosalind says, whatever you want, you have to give, and you will receive back in many forms. If I give my time or financial support, I'm receiving teachings and blessings for good karma. Well, that's beautiful. So in the giving, there is receiving, just in the very foundation of the giving, right? So it's interesting to just get more specific about what you're saying, Rosalind, is when you say whatever you want, you have to give. So to receive love, you need to be able to give it. And it's interesting that in order to be able to receive love, we have to have some degree of self-love to be able to feel that we're worthy of that love, right? So in some respect, in order to receive love, we need to give that love even just to ourselves, let alone to others. But we need to believe that we're worthy of that love. And it's the same with receiving, that there's a lot around worthiness in being willing to receive. And there is this notion of indebtedness and reciprocity that is part of this whole giving and receiving dance. It's interesting. Someone said yesterday, we talked about this in my group from group coaching, and someone said the first time someone makes a request, I'm happy to help them. The second time, maybe. The third and fourth and fifth time, maybe not so much, if there's no reciprocity, right? If someone is just there taking. So we have this very interesting dance around reciprocity. Like we need to know or have an experience of value, I guess, in our giving. The value could be, it makes me feel good to know, for instance, that I'm contributing to certain causes or certain organizations to support the work that they do. And the receiving that I get is knowing that I'm contributing to the to that work. So, that's one level of reciprocity, is just being able to feel good about yourself for doing something positive or being part of something that's positive. Another level of reciprocity is, I help you, and then eventually maybe there's a time when I have a need and I express that to you, and you reciprocate or you don't, right? And if there are numbers of times where there's no reciprocity, then the relationship can break down. It's interesting because it's not necessarily sort of a measure for measure kind of scorekeeping, but I think on some level, we do keep score. I can say that after giving gifts and having them not even acknowledged, it made me think, well, why am I doing this? If it doesn't make a difference for the other person, why would I continue to do this? And so there's a reward in knowing that you're making a contribution that makes a difference, right? And sometimes that can be its own reward, that there doesn't have to be a reciprocity of physical gifts, but the reward of knowing that it makes a difference or that it's appreciated, that matters. So in terms of receiving, what goes on? What would it take to be willing to receive? When someone gives you a compliment, instead of deflecting it, what would it be to receive it? And how might that feel if you actually let it sink in? Because someone else has extended themselves to give you something. And sometimes people give us stuff we don't want or ask for. And I don't mean just physical stuff. You know, sometimes people give us their opinions when we haven't invited that, or sometimes people give us feedback that we haven't invited or created an opening for. It's an interesting dance, and to look at what is generosity. You know, we can be generous in our receiving, right? We can be generous in making space for others to express themselves, to when we receive, there's an acknowledgement of the other, right? When someone says something nice, for example, and you allow yourself to receive it, that's also giving a gift to the other person, because it's like, wow, thank you so much. When we think of receiving, the act of receiving, really receiving, there's an opening, right? There's a bringing into oneself. And in that receiving, there's a connection, there's sort of a communing with the others, with the other person. Rosalind says, I think when receiving, my body language will slightly bow the head, blink slow, place hand gestures like putting hand to heart. Isn't that interesting? Like to call in that experience of receiving. Thank you for that, Rosalind, because there is real body language to receiving. And if somebody's saying, oh, you're so smart, no, look at the body language. It's actually pushing it away, instead of embracing it and calling our heart present. So it's very interesting. Thank you for that body language notion, because when we're not receiving, we're recoiling, right? We're deflecting, we're rejecting, we're pushing away, versus embracing and being present, being open. I think it's such an interesting dynamic, because most of us, when we think of receiving, if there's guilt around it, or shame because we don't have the same capacity to give something back that is of equal monetary value, for example, then there may be shame, there may be guilt, there may be all these feelings that are all very much about ourselves. You know, all the stories that we might create around receiving and worthiness and all of that. it's so interesting to notice all the things that can come up around this. Rosalind says, I receive love from my pets every day. I give them food and pats on the head. In return, they surround the house and lift my spirit, whatever they are doing. Pets are the best, right? Like they give so much love and allow the expression of so much love too, which is a gift in and of itself. So my Jewel cat used to get beat up by her brother every time I would give her love. He would beat her up. And so when he passed, she was very reluctant to be able to receive love. And so she is letting me love her more and more and more. And it's just such a gift to me that she is allowing me to love her so deeply. And she's becoming a lot more expressive of love too. And I feel like we're both learning how to receive love together. And our animal friends are such wonderful teachers, aren't they? Yes, Rosalind says, what a beautiful gift to witness Jewel. Yeah, she's magic. She's just so wonderful. It's funny now, I've been standing at my standing desk more, and she'll come and she'll sit on my chair, and then she paws at me to pet her. And sometimes she'll even climb up on me to pet her. And she's become so much more demonstrative in her, not just requests, but her demands for love and affection, which just tickles me and really warms my heart to see her making up for lost time and really being able to receive love and affection. It's a beautiful thing. And receiving love, that's a big deal. It means on some level us knowing that we're worthy, to truly receive love. And I think as we are more loving toward ourselves, we enrich our capacity to receive that love. So I think that's our conversation for today about receiving. It's a dance. And I invite you to receive the world, to allow it into your heart, to connect with nature and receive the love available for you in nature, just through her beauty and magnificence. So with that, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And I am so grateful to you for engaging in these conversations and considerations, these morning musings. And until next time, so much love to you.